Dr. James Smith, or actually when he first got here, the Dr. James Smith, arrived right here in Kaloa in 1842, and what it must have been like, and I'm sure he really appreciated the dancing. And so. But even though missionaries, some of them said no hula, but I think we're heading in the same direction now. But it's so neat how the descendants of some of the early missionaries have really incorporated their lives and integrated into the communities to which they live. And it was just beautiful thinking about all those years since 1842 to today, thinking right here how Kaloa must have changed so much. Well, for my sermon, I actually wanted to talk a little bit about my ancestors, and I wasn't thinking about this even when I knew Laurie was coming, but I've always wondered what it was like when my great-grandfather, Akana, showed up in Hawaii many, many years ago. And he was born in 1859 in Guangzhou, which is the southeastern part of China. And he was just 7 years old when he left. And he hopped on a boat with an older cousin by the name of Apun. And so Akana and Apun, these two cousins, took a boat and sailed all the way across the Pacific and eventually ended up in San Francisco. They spent a little bit of time there, and then they hopped on another boat and they sailed to, we think, Honolulu, and then another boat and went to Hilo. And sometime soon after they landed in Hilo on Hawaii Island, Apun just kind of disappeared. None of my relatives know anything about him, except that he traveled with Akana, and he was a cousin. So he either died quite young, or went back to China, or went somewhere else. But I've often wondered what it was like for Akana, as a 7-year-old little boy, to leave China, sail across the Pacific to San Francisco, and then end up in Hilo, of all places. He didn't really have much stability in his life. I mean, if you think about it, his community was the crews on the ships that he was on. He really didn't know anybody when he left, except for the cousin, as far as we know. And eventually he just kind of disappeared. But as I thought often about his life, I've been thinking a lot lately about immigrants today. And I thought, you know, some things just have never really changed. Just like my great-grandfather was an immigrant to Hilo, on the Big Island, Hawaii Island. Immigrants today, I'm pretty sure go through a lot of the same things that he went through. So as I was looking back over some notes that I had taken on his life and the book that I wrote about my family's life here in Hawaii, I realized that he showed up in Hilo not knowing anything about the place, except he had heard that there's a lot of Chinese somewhere on this island that live in these things called camps. They were the plantation camps, and he knew that when he was in California, that there were people he could speak Cantonese with. That was his native tongue. But he wondered, well, when I get to Hilo, am I going to run into any Chinese people that speak my language? And of course, he learned enough broken English on the ships to kind of get around and figure out what he needed. But I'm sure one of the biggest questions on his mind was, will anybody speak my native tongue? Well, for about 18 years before he actually arrived in Hilo as an 11-year-old boy, there had been Chinese workers on the plantations, and many of them had left the plantations and they actually lived in Hilo, and they ran some businesses. There were also Chinese that spoke Cantonese that just kind of showed up in Hilo, never intending to be part of the sugarcane plantations. They weren't the manual day workers. But anyway, I was just picturing what it must have been like for little Akana as an 11-year-old boy to step off this boat just wondering, where am I going to sleep tonight? Will anybody speak my language? And having done some research on the history of the Chinese in Hawaii, I'm confident that the minute he stepped off the boat, there were people speaking Cantonese. And I can only imagine what that must have been like for him, knowing there's people who speak my native tongue. And even though he had a lot to learn about the culture of Hilo and Hawaii, at least from the moment he got off that boat, he had this sense of, people that I can relate to, people that I can understand and not have to try to understand. I just naturally understand because they're, guess what, speaking my language. So as I was thinking about Akana, I was really intrigued about how his life must have changed from the moment he stepped foot in Hawaii, or at least in Hilo, to what it was like when he was a young adult and married my great-grandmother, who was a full native Hawaiian. So he went from a little boy having no idea if anybody would speak his language, and having no idea where he was going to rest his head for the night, having no idea what he was going to do. Was he going to go to school? How was he going to make a living? He had no idea of any of that. But by the time my father was born, he had a family. He and his wife, Kailianu, had raised 14 children. 14. And by the time that the children had all grown up, grandchildren were actually living in the home as well, including my father and one of my aunts. Imagine the change from this little 11-year-old boy having no idea about the culture, having no idea about anything really about Hawaii, to being this full-grown man with a wife, a family, grandchildren, a house full of children and grandchildren, and fully integrating into this community. The whole family went to the church that was about 2 blocks away in Keaukaha on Hilo Bay, and I just thought, what an amazing transformation it must have been for him, having no idea of anything, but hoping he would talk to some people in Chinese and Cantonese, to being somebody that was really fully integrated into society. And I thought, that's what immigrants continue to do. That's what they hope for. And when they're welcomed, immigrants are able to do just that, to fully integrate into society. As I was thinking about today's scripture reading that Phyllis read from us to us from the 2nd chapter of Acts, it occurred to me that some of the people that were in Jerusalem on that day of Pentecost must have had the same feeling. So what Pentecost was before the Christian Pentecost, in the Old Testament, people would gather 7 weeks after the official opening day of the harvest, and they would offer hopefully in Jerusalem, but wherever they were, they would offer a grain offering based on how they've been blessed so far during the harvest. So there were people that came from hundreds and hundreds of miles away, who were Jewish, to Jerusalem to offer their offering to God as a way of thanking God for all the blessings, and especially the blessing of food and sustenance that they had. So they were there, and many of them were probably thinking, where am I going to lay my head tonight? Where am I going to sleep? What am I going to do while I'm here? This is a very strange place. Yes, it's Jerusalem, and I'm Jewish, and I've always wanted to come here, but imagine the people that were there for the first time, what it must have been like. And then, as they're around the temple, they hear all these strange people from a place called Galilee. Many of them probably had no idea where it was, speaking their language from their home. Now, when I was growing up, I often heard preachers talk about there's all these people from all over the then-known world, the Roman Empire, showing up in Jerusalem that probably didn't speak the language. However, they were all Jewish, and most Jewish people spoke enough Hebrew to be able to get around. Okay, so if you were Jewish, just as if you were Jewish today, and you showed up, you would know some Hebrew. So my thought was, okay, so Jesus' disciples are speaking all these languages, places where people came from, like Rome and Crete and Egypt and Libya. If all the people were there probably spoke enough Hebrew to get by, why would they need to hear it in their own language? And then also, most people probably spoke Greek pretty well, because that was the common language throughout the Roman Empire. And besides that, they spoke probably every day the language where they came from. So if they were Rome, they spoke as the Romans did. If they were in Crete, they spoke Cretan. If they were in Egypt, they probably spoke Egyptian. Wherever they were from, that was probably the common language that they spoke in their community every day, and the language they were most comfortable with. So it occurred to me as I was reading the 2nd chapter of Acts this week, I thought, wow, I think I finally get it. It's not that they didn't speak Hebrew. They did. It's not that they couldn't understand Greek. They could get by with Greek. But why in the world would Jesus' disciples be speaking in every single one of their common languages? And I thought of Akana. As he got off that boat, he's speaking broken English, enough to get by, but he heard his native tongue. It must have been just so welcoming for Akana. And I thought, this is what it must have been like for the people that had come to Jerusalem on that Pentecost day to hear. It was the language that just drew them in, and it reminded me that the Holy Spirit has always been radically welcoming and inclusive. And as the church was just getting started, the message is the church, the community of faith of the followers of Jesus Christ, has always been radically welcoming and inclusive. The disciples could have easily said, you know what? All these people are going to understand if we speak Hebrew or Greek. Let's just do that. Why should we go the extra mile? And yet, the church has been going the extra mile ever since, being radically inclusive and welcoming. And that really is the message of Pentecost for me today. That's exactly who we are. Almost 3 years ago, this church got together, and we did this in small groups and in a large congregational gathering, and I think on surveymonkey.com. But anyway, the question was, who are we? Who do we want to be? And where do we believe God leading us? And one of the things that came up over and over and over again is, we want to be more welcoming and inclusive. I think more people said that than any other thing that we heard, or at least that I heard. And then, so out of that came this idea of, well, you know what? We don't really look all that welcoming from the street. We didn't have a whole lot of curb appeal. So the question was, what shall we do about that? And all of you, let's have a capital campaign and fix this so that we will actually look like what we say we want to be and who we say we are, radically welcoming and inclusive. And let me just tell you the difference between 3 years ago and today. So the conversation that I used to have when I would be down, say at Poipu or the shops at Kukui'ula, and I told somebody, well, I'm the pastor of Koloa Union Church, and they would say, Koloa Union Church? Where's that? And I would say, well, we're right on Poipu Road, right past the library and the school. And they would go, oh, the big white church. And I would say, well, no, we're not the big white church, once again. We're the church next door. And almost always people would say to me, there's a church there? So we were not only not looking welcoming and inclusive, we were pretty invisible. To at least to a lot of people, and I'm talking about people that live in the community that drive by here a lot. They just didn't even know we were here. And once in a great while, somebody would say, oh, is that church that's kind of tucked back there behind all those trees and bushes and things? And I would say, oh, yeah, that's us. You know? So anyway, now, 3 years later, when I tell people, oh, I'm the pastor of Koloa Union Church, most of the time I don't even have to tell them where I am, where the church is. They go, oh, that church is so beautiful. You guys have done such a great job. I love looking at your church. Some people have even said, I've stopped by there just to look at it. And Dan Giovanni and I were in my office one day, and a lady she came in, she parked, and she walked in and said, excuse me, I hate to bother you, but I'm a tourist here, and I was just driving by, and I was just wondering, is it okay if I just take pictures of your church? Dan and I almost cried. I mean, it was amazing. And to me, it's all part of that idea that not only a belief, but an essence that we have as this church and as a part of the United Church of Christ, that we are welcoming, that we are affirming, that we radically welcome all people to our fellowship. And it's just such a pleasure for me to stand before you today to talk about the difference between 3 years ago and today. We do have a lot more people coming now than we did back then, but the people who were here 3 years ago have always been welcoming, have always been inclusive, and the people that have been coming, I believe, have always been welcoming and inclusive, but now we look like it. we look like people are actually welcome here. And it starts out on the street from where we opened up the driveway so that people actually drive in the middle of the property instead of by those two trees down there with all the roots. And some people are wondering if they should park on the street because they didn't even know if they could make it over the roots here. It's like, yes, you're welcome. You can come right in. And then having this walkway out here extend to the parking lot. And it's not only a welcoming feel, but people in walkers and people in wheelchairs and people with canes, they can walk right up without having to worry about tripping on roots and rocks and all these other things. We are looking and feeling more welcoming and inclusive than ever. And now as I think about where we are today and where we're heading, first of all, I just, again, want to thank everybody for your commitments to the Capital Campaign, your financial commitments, as well as your commitments of prayer, and the people that were out on their hands and knees planting that grass a little over a year ago, and so on and so forth. Thank you for what you've done so far. And then the next thing that we're planning on doing is opening up this space over here, basically where the bench is out here and then where the pews are, and closing this and just making it feel more like this is all of us together. And when we have Sundays where, especially from December through about April, we're so packed that we have people sitting out there on the benches. So we're going to actually create space so that more people can fit in here, and also just make it more welcoming and inclusive looking as well. So this whole space will be opened up so that we're not going to have these big doors here anymore. We will have screen doors out there, so we'll still have the airflow, but we're still going to have room for more people. And also, when you walk up this way, rather than thinking, now, which door do I come in and where's the church? There's going to be this kind of grand entryway right over here with these koa doors. And I'm just really excited about what's about to happen. So one thing that I just wanted to say in closing is, as much as I love the fact that we look so beautiful, more than that, I'm so thrilled that we're attracting people, just like the language that Akana heard when he was 11 years old, and it was his language, and it just felt like, I'm welcome. When people walk in here now, they just feel like, even before the prayers or the music or the sermon, it just feels so much more welcoming. So I want to thank you for that. And as we move forward with our projects for the future, I want to thank you also for your prayers and your financial commitments. And again, rolling up your sleeves and just doing the things that we do so that we can continue being radically welcoming, and inclusive. Amen.